Hello there, and welcome to a new build guide for Age of Wonders 4, and this time I got you some Materium Barbarian build. Somebody in the comment section asked me for that specifically. I was very happy to try that out, as I was usually relying quite hard on the chaos affinity of the Barbarians. Here, we went all into the Materium, and it is a combination of a ranged and tanky build. Crazy, eh? But it is actually what it is. So let's get started with the racial traits at first. So, in case you don't know it already, the Barbarian's unique thing is the Savage Strike ability, which makes their critical hits hit harder with blight damage. So I went here to go for overwhelm tactics on the race because I want to amplify those critical hits. Since we are skipping out on a few of the typical critical hit amplifiers, I really like this one. Sneaky for some extra flanking damage. You could interchange that with a lot of things. Light-footed, for example, would be a good thing. This one I personally picked up because I love how good you can get into flanks with this build because you are rocking a lot of skirmishers. Choose to your own liking. I found this one pretty devastating, to be quite honest, though. And cheerful. We gain morale quicker, which means we crit more often. That's a very basic setup. I think sneaky can be interchanged. I wouldn't change out overwhelm tactics because the baseline critical hit chance is just invaluable. Now, cultural traits, I went for runesmiths because we have a boatload of different unit enchantments, and this makes you faster, makes them cheaper. There's just so much goodness out of that. You also gain an extra shield unit when you start the game. That ain't bad either, because you have a pretty big unit stack to begin with. And Scions of Evil for the other one. I think you could change that into any other shadow trait that you want, but I personally found Scions of Evil on Barbarians pretty cool because you gain a lot of draft. You see, every one of my cities has now seriously a really big pile of draft due to the very evil alignment. We have 20 draft for free. Eventually it's 30. So it's also giving you a good Imperium income, which fits quite well to the expansionistic playstyle of the Barbarian culture. I think you could interchange that with the Devious Watchers, even Keepers of Knowledge if you want to go for a good playthrough instead of an evil playthrough. I personally just keep vouching for the shadow traits because of knowledge extraction being available that early, and it gives you a good boost whenever you kill enemy heroes, and enemy heroes you will kill. So let's move over to the tome section. I went all into the Tome of Rock first up. It gives you plenty of tools that you really like to have. Obsidian weapons are an upgrade for your entire army, frontline and backline. This extra bleeding can stack up to 5 times, which means 20 damage per turn in the ideal situation. I mean, it doesn't work against ethereal and undead, which is pretty much a downside, but apart from that, we gain also a bit of extra damage. It's a good all-rounder skill. Earthkin for more defenses on our rather squishy troops comes in super handy. Rock Blast to push people out of defense modes. In all honesty, this is what we use it in this build mostly for, but it's quite useful. And Gargoyles as your cheap discount berserkers. These guys are hard to kill, flying, have a good punch, and yeah, they're pretty cool as they are available on tier 2 already. And last but not least, Stone Skin. It's a pretty good steroid for emergency situations. Just don't use it on spiritual enemies and forget about the stone spirits. Technically, you could use them. Practically, well, I think the Barbarians tier 1 shields are better for this build. You could use them to evolve them into stone spirit stone. There's nothing wrong about that. And last but not least, the central quarry gives our city more productivity, which is, if you can build it, pretty powerful because you really gain a lot of hammers out of that. The second tome I picked up here was the Tome of Alchemy, simply because there's a lot of utility here on this tome, and we go deeper on that. But first up, let me talk about Afflictors. These guys are a really nice complement to your Furies. They don't have the damage that your Furies have, but they have a really good single target nuke, and the Afflicting Miasma weakens the enemy and gives them even faster their bleeding stacks. If you have any other form of damage to deal, you also can inflict various other statuses. this is mostly happening via heroes. This is really cool as it really boosts up your capabilities to get that damage over time on the enemy. But it doesn't stop here. We gain Mysterious Tonic, which is a really cool add-on for your War Shamans, which buffs your troops with status effects and dispels. Since this is a free action, this thing is really excellent. It's much better than it looks like on paper. And material refineries. Yeah, these guys, they give you upfront just a low income of knowledge and gold, but since we are going into the Tome of Transmutation, that magic material component is going to be satisfied, and it upgrades cities that have this stuff as well. We also gain the Alchemist Lab, which is a powerhouse of knowledge. So I was really struck between the other Earth Tome, the one with the Copper Golems and the Sundering Strikes, on this one, but I went for this one because it has a stronger economical impact. The other Earth Tome that you could pick, the other Tier 1, is more of a militaristic choice. Here we go for supporty skills, as Anti-Magic Tincture is really a powerhouse of negative status effect removal. I mean, 1 hex radius for 10 mana. It's really big. And Fumigation and Afflicting Miasma give you battlefield options for sieges and for battlefield to go for more Miasma. Mind you, gives also Weakened. Ain't bad at all. So, with Tier 2 coming on up, I went for Fey Mists. Fey Mists gives you the Staves of Mist ability, which is a serious upgrade for your War Shamans. Now they can finally do more than just point blank, than just AoE heal. They also really do quite a lot of heavy lifting with the Fey Blessing, and we also have the Tome of Alchemy's extra ability. Here you will notice how useful your supporters start to get. Fey Mists also gives you Mistlings. These little fellas are really, really cool, as we have a ton of tier 3 skirmishing action in this build. They can teleport around, they can do nice ranged attacks that debuff the enemy, and altogether their only downside is that they are relatively costly and need a tier 3 summoning tower. Fey Embrace for more countering of ranged attacks and buffing your troops, and Fey Touch to get more bonus from the mists. And yeah, Fey Water Pond can be used into this build, as it really cranks up the mana income, because Barbarian cities love foresters, so there's quite a synergy here. The other tier 2 I went for was Shades. So, we gain access to the Shade, yet another tier 3 skirmisher unit, this one recruitable in cities. These guys are here for applying blindness and hitting like trucks, basically finishing off enemies, because their fatality attribute makes them really good last hitters. Shadow Blades allows us to ignore 50% of the enemy's defenses if they are blind. Shadows can afflict blindness via ranged attacks. The Living Shadows enchantment gives the enemy a chance to go blind if they attack us, and Rending Shadows gives us a 1 hex radius nuke that inflicts blindness and shreds defenses. This is where we get to really hurt the enemy bad. Really, really bad. You know, you already have that critical hit thing, but a blinded enemy, you will see how quickly you can get into triple digits with your tier 3 units. It's amazing. You also gain the Shade Network, which is excellent for vassalized cities, or generally excellent, because 10 knowledge is never a bad deal. It's just a little bit costly for those center cities, but on the outer frontier cities, this can be really, really good. Now, tier 3, we pick up Tome of Transmutation. The Transmutation Circle, I already mentioned it. It mimics a magic material, so alchemy synergy here yet again. We also gain the ability to sunder defenses really badly via Melt Armor. Adaptive Armor makes our front line so much more tanky. In combination with the Steel Skin enchantment, we have a total of +3 to physical resistance on our build already. That's pretty massive. We're still pretty vulnerable against magical damage, but luckily we can't heal our troops, so I find it at this point extremely well-rounded. With some weaknesses, that is. Transmute resources can be used to power up your cities once you don't need that mana anymore. Can be really cool. And last but not least, the Transmuters. Very, very moderate damage dealers. Their job is to melt enemies' defenses and boost up your defenses and stun like bosses. They're tier 4 troops though, so they're costly and should be used wisely. But one transmuter per army never did hurt. But you would be okay with just, in all honesty, skipping out on these and saying, I don't need that. So at this point, we take a little detour into nature back again, into the Tome of Cycles. Mostly because I want that Projectiles of Decay too badly. We are doing a lot of ranged attacks on this build. We have a lot of good ranged attackers, via skirmishing and archers. Projectiles of Decay is so good as it also upgrades all supporters and even our battle mages, and the decay is such a nice add-on to our bleeding. So any enemy without status removal is really just crumbling down to pieces. They can't even heal themselves anymore. That's really cool. With parting gifts and diffuse health, we can keep our people alive a little bit more. That's pretty valuable in the later stages of the game when you will notice that you don't have those big tier 3 shields and whatnot. This is why the Druid of the Cycle with his resurrection skills can be also very handy. And yeah, once we hit tier 4, we go deeper into Crucible for meteor arrows. This is the point where your archers really go impressive. For more increasing, for really cool fire spells in general, I really like that one. And we can top it off after that with either Golden Realm or Severing, to your own liking. Personally, big fan of Golden Realm because I love those flippin' gold golems, but Severing with the Severing Golem is also really good. I would choose Severing if the enemy's unit enchantment are really bothering me a ton, and Golden Realm if that ain't the case, because Severing gives you massive tools against unit enchantments. Okay, so let's talk about the strategy and roster part. So Sunderers are amazing troops in this build. These guys are low cost, massive payout. These javelins of theirs, they sunder defenses. This is what I personally really love about them, hence their name, Sunderer. These guys have the ability to soften up troops, so that means you put your shield troops in front and soften them up and follow up with melee. This is a unholy combination which only gets better and better throughout the game. The only downside that remains is that they're really vulnerable, but beyond that, such goodness. Really, their main takeaway is how darned cheap and fast they are. So you can use them at any stage of the game to clean up your own territory, because, you know, 6 Sunderers and the War Shaman are a force that you can clean up stuff with, or you just bolster up your ranks quickly and replace them later with better quality troops. Either way, they're really excellent units. Same goes for the Warriors. These guys are not so good at attacking magic damage, as you see, but physical, it goes really well eventually. But their main takeaway is the stun. So higher tier units aren't that susceptible against that, but low tier units can be just taken out. You can take massive advantage by stunning people and choke points with that, and in general they're just a very, very good tier 1 unit. But in the long run, you will need something better than these blokes. We don't recruit anything better than these guys via our tomes, you might say. So is that a bad thing? Not at all, because we can play with berserkers and recklessness so much. I'll be talking about that later. So, when we hit tier 2, a whole array of new troops opens up. I want to go over the War Shamans real quick first though. So, War Shamans have the Invigorate skill, which has a stupidly high cooldown, but has a decent healing ability. The regeneration they put up is not bad at all, but at the end of the day, they are quite clunky. That's why we want that Fey Blessing. Overall, your healing capacity isn't as high as with other builds, but since we have so much backup from our tomes, they get the job done quite easily. Their main job is just to keep your folks alive, spread defensive modes, and shoot away. You will need 3 to 4 of these in your army, in my own experience. Gargoyles are, here again, one of those units that I personally really love having. They have a decent punch, and most importantly, they heal themselves when they go into defense and go into Stone Skin even. So, for a Shock Trooper, they're obscenely hard to kill. They benefit from all of our other enchantments, and are therefore really good. And then the Furies and the Afflictors. Furies have Frenzy, which means they hit harder the more often they shoot, which is, in combination with our native critical hit chance, pretty decent. On the other hand, we have Afflictors, which are more of a strategical piece with the miasma shot. Personally, mixing these 50-50 was a really good choice. Tier 3, we gain the Shades. These are just better Sunderers. Don't get me wrong, these guys have everything that the Sunderers have going, just better. Because once you have these, blindness most of the time means that you get to ignore 50% of the enemy's defenses. Sure, sundering the enemy's defenses on top of that is also nice, but you wouldn't need it as much anymore. So, long story short, it's totally okay to eventually replace all your Sunderers with Shades and get those Sunderers on different jobs elsewhere. That's really the beauty about it. And the Berserker. These guys are the main reason why we get away with having no big chunky frontliners. These guys are steadfast once they go 33% or lower, which means they can't die. Since we have quite some backbone in terms of healing via heroes, more about that in a minute, we can really easily just move them away and put somebody else up in front. This is really massive, and these guys should be, together with your gargoyles, these are your frontline. So you play a shock frontline, which works. I'm shocked because you kill the enemy. You hurt the enemy so hard with your Alpha Strike that whatever comes back is tankable with what we already got, because we are a Materium build. Our units are hard to kill. We also have all these different enchantments making your units much harder to kill, and eventually you will really notice how well that works. So, when it comes down to heroes, I gotta say though, don't play this without a ritualist hero, because the war shamans themselves, they just don't do enough heavy lifting. You want that extra healing. Here I went for restore build, for resurrection. You could also go for overflowing restoration for more AoE heals. You could go even for wild growth thingy that gives you more HP and bolstered defenses. There's so many ways how you can pull this off, but ritualists are really good for this build. So, you might ask yourself though at this point, Icon, this is a critical hit faction. You almost have no critical hit tomes. That's true, but it still scores more than enough critical hits with the following tricks. First up, I went with a Mortal Champion main hero because you can go here into Champion of War. So your heroes spread an AoE zone of critical hit enhancement. Very massive. You can go for Initiate of Chaos, as we have a Chaos affinity by being Barbarians. So 30% extra critical hit per se. We have Overwhelm Tactics, 50%. Comes up to morale bonuses, so yeah, 50% was for me personally more than enough. And there's other tricks that you can use elsewhere. Overall, ritualists I felt like were among the most attractive things that that I found for this build early on, because support is where you fall the weakest. But the fun part is ritualist heroes and the war shamans in this configuration were more than enough to get me through all the battles that I had to fight. Also, I want to mention that I don't have it researched here. There is a Barbarian Cultural spell that gives you fortune on a area. I think it's Song of Victory. Don't know why I haven't researched it here, but sometimes these things happen. Song of Victory is another steroid that you can use to get yourself more critical hit. The basic idea of this build is that you trade off a portion of your critical hit ratio in favor of more tankiness. If that is not so much to your own liking, you can freely take out the Tome of Shades and replace it with the Tome of Artifice. This would give you then much more critical hit chance via artisan armaments. I mean, this is really a lot. And you gain iron golems, which is a shield frontline. In case you don't like playing with this shock skirmisher frontline that I was mentioning here. If you want to play them, the most important thing is to let the enemy come at you and burst down whatever comes too close to you and heal up whatever the enemy dumps on you. You are excellent at managing negative status effects with that build via the Tome of Alchemy. You have all the tools that you require for that, and yeah, you are able to tank AoE stuff. You are able to tank at the front line with your enchantments. So overall, the enemy is usually only able to bounce in your front line and then you blast them with all your backline nukes. Imperium skills, we also have a lot of materium available. This is something which is really, really massive, as the economy of this build is just going crazy. You have such an easy time in getting your cities going. You also gain very early access to the Right of Wealth, and yeah, I mean, you have so much abilities, so many abilities to get yourself a huge empire. This is one of the things that I personally found very, very powerful about this build. You have, though, again, a couple of weaknesses. You need to work hard for your knowledge. So clap out those alchemist slabs as quick as possible. Keep yourself building research buildings, because the barbarian culture is not innately that good at this, but you have the tools with this build. Last but not least, I want to mention here that this build also benefits a lot from the Rally of Allegiance, because here, for example, I could recruit myself some supporters to fill my gaps. I could recruit myself some tier 4 fighter, which would be also a good thing. So whatever you do, don't underestimate how valuable vassals are for this build. So this goes in in two ways. For one, the Rally of Allegiance is an excellent way to fill in blanks of your armies, and the other thing is that your shade network is more powerful when you have borders with a vassalized city. So that's that. All right, I don't have much more to add into this build. It is fun. I really thought that I would have trouble with the support, because I am only racking up these war shamans as the only thing and no frontline and all, but it works. It doesn't matter that you don't have too much frontline. It doesn't matter that you tank most of the things with berserkers and tier 1 shields, because most of the time people are not even able to kill you, because you kill them back before they do. And even if so, here I went for this one because I had some bad thoughts, but I never did use it at the end of the day. Last but not least, I really want to stress out how much heavy lifting you can do on this build by just spamming out a lot of cheap units and flinging them into the enemy. You have really, really super high damage, and all you need to do is keep your units a little bit alive. Due to the fact that we rack up so much resistances against physical stuff, I can only say the biggest weakness of this build is magical damage. If that happens, you might even want to consider swapping on out the Tome of Alchemy for Tome of Warding, because that gives you the ability to tank that stuff better. So, some options. Alright, that's that. Thanks for watching, you all. Leave me your comments down below. I really hope this was fun, or is fun for you to play. Let me know what you want to see build-wise as well, because I really love to hear your recommendations. This build was, after all, a community recommendation too. And yeah, leave a like, leave a subscribe. Feel free to support the channel financially. I really, really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for watching this video yet again. And yeah, have a nice day. See you soon.